Colleagues, I didn't want to come down to the well today, but I felt like I had to, and I told Speaker Shepherd and Chairman Jean in advance that I would if this bill was run today. And so that's what I'm doing. My issue really is that we're being asked to vote on a more than $8 billion Medicaid budget less than 48 hours after a court decision that has a pretty significant effect on the Medicaid budget. And I cannot support that. Last night, as I was kind of stewing about the fact that this bill was going to be run today with such short notice, I decided to go back and look at what was said when we ran the same appropriation a year and 2 years ago, just to see what we were told, because this is my fifth session, and those of you that have been around, they all sort of blur together, and you just kind of forget all the specifics. So I wanted to go back and hear what was said about this a year ago and 2 years ago. And also I know that almost a fourth of you weren't here a year and 2 years ago. And so for one thing, like I mentioned in my question to Chairman Jean, I went back and watched him present the bill 2 years ago, and he said in there that we can't sustain this budget as is if we don't do something. In addition, I went back and looked at what the governor had said, and I went through a lot of his press releases. And I want to talk about a few things he said last year when we ran this budget in the fiscal session. And the first one is from February in his State of the State address before the fiscal session started last year. He said, and I quote, "As for the future, I expect approval from Washington before the legislative session ends on our request to implement a work requirement for the Arkansas Works program. If you are able-bodied and of working age with no dependents, you should be working or in training. The only long-lasting solution to lowering the cost of Medicaid is to help more people earn their way off. The only long-lasting solution to lowering the cost of Medicaid is to help more people earn their way off." So my question is, if this is no longer a solution because we no longer have the work requirement, are there other solutions that we can consider before we vote for this appropriation? Because I know there's at least one representative who has a bill to help lower the cost of Medicaid, specifically for the expansion population that we're really all talking about here. Could we not discuss some of that before we vote on this bill? The next statement was on March 6th, a few weeks later. It was a press release that said, "Governor Hutchinson issues statement in response to the passage of Senate Bill 30, the Division of Medical Services appropriation," same appropriation as we have here today. This was last year. Quote, "I'm very grateful for the senators that were able to support Arkansas Works and the DHS appropriation. Obviously, the work requirement was a significant factor in showing the reform that we're accomplishing, and I appreciate the Senate's leadership in passing this on the first vote. Obviously, the work requirement was a significant factor." A few days later, and this will be the last one, a press release titled "Turning Point for Healthcare in Arkansas." The governor said, "The work requirement is not intended as a punishment, but as a way for Arkansas to actively engage, for Arkansans to actively engage in their community and to enjoy the dignity that comes with earning a paycheck and providing for a family. The fact is, we would not have been able to sustain Medicaid without the type of reform included in the waiver. We needed the flexibility to best address the needs of Arkansas, and that is what this waiver allows. The fact is, we would not have been able to sustain Medicaid without the type of reform included in the waiver, which as of today, as we are voting on this bill, we do not have." So my question is that statement true? If it's true that we can't sustain Medicaid without this waiver, then aren't we being asked today to vote for an appropriation for an unsustainable Medicaid program? It seems to follow to me. So really, I'm going to end with a lot of questions that I came up last night as I watched what I was told over the last 2 years about this same appropriation. My first question was, why was this appropriation passed out of budget during a recess from our session on Tuesday? I talked to several members who didn't even realize that had happened, but this bill was passed out of joint budget on Tuesday afternoon. Why was it then passed out of the Senate with a minimum of 27 votes just minutes before the district court's decision was released on Wednesday? According to the legislature's website, that bill passed out at 3:36 p.m., and our AP reporter Andrew DeMillo tweeted at 4:03 p.m. that the work requirement was struck down. So less than 30 minutes before we get the decision, the Senate passed the bill. Why was this appropriation then put before the House for a final vote less than 48 hours after the court's decision? I got text about this about 4 o'clock 2 days ago. It's less than 48 hours, and now we're being asked to make an $8 billion decision. Why is this appropriation not being amended at all now that the work requirement piece is out of it? This appropriation was filed when the work requirement was in effect, and it has not been amended since. Does the work requirement not affect the Medicaid budget? Either the work requirement has no effect, which Chairman Jean said it has about a $20 million effect by his calculation, or the appropriation bill is intentionally inflated for DHS. And I listened to the Senate debate, and Senator Teague, the Senate budget chairman, said that there's plenty of appropriation either way. And Chairman Jean said a similar thing today. So then that begs the question to me, what is the point of this appropriation at all if DHS can just do whatever they want anyway? Why do we even bother with the appropriation if DHS and the executive branch can just do whatever they want anyway? Does the governor still hold his prior positions that the work requirement is the only long-lasting solution for lowering the cost of Medicaid? That it was a significant factor in passing this appropriation last year, and that the Medicaid program is unsustainable without it? And lastly, since we currently don't know if this case will be appealed, because just to clarify, the federal government is the defendant in this case, not the state of Arkansas. So this is not Attorney General Leslie Rutledge's decision to appeal this case or not. That is a federal government decision, which, as we're being asked to vote on this bill today, we have no indication that it for sure will be appealed. What if the case isn't appealed? Can we at least wait to pass this appropriation until after we know that it will be appealed? If it is appealed, how long was that going to take to resolve? Could it take years? Is it going to go to the Supreme Court? What happens to Medicaid between now and then? I think the House deserves to have our questions answered, to be given adequate time to consider the ramifications of the court's decision and the path forward, and to be included as a co-equal in these decisions rather than being run over with an $8 billion decision in less than 48 hours. With that, I would appreciate a no vote on this appropriation.